Welcome back. So Vegas, baby, Vegas. So yesterday after the first news video, news broke that they're going to put Mark Stone on LTIR, which helps to free up the space to get Jack Eichel onto the roster. Since that was the only thing that had happened, I thought, well, I'm not just going to do a news video based on that. So here we are to discuss that part. And I know how sketchy that looks. The weird part to me is I don't think it's Stone that necessarily needs to be on LTIR. Now, when you put a player on LTIR, there is a physical that they go through. The league does verify whether or not players belong on LTIR. And I've had this argument before that I think there are probably players who have nagging conditions, whether it's back, knee, maybe hip, that they could go to a doctor and the doctor says, yeah, you shouldn't be playing on this. You shouldn't be playing with this physical condition. And so there are players who could likely go on LTIR. I have no doubt that Stone's back has been bothering him. Stone is a very competitive player. He's not just going to voluntarily say, all right, I won't play. But this does allow them to have the cap space to bring Jack Eichel in. They've also waived Adam Brooks. They picked him up earlier in the season on waivers from the Montreal Canadiens, who picked him up from the Toronto Maple Leafs. So would I be surprised if Brooks ends up back in Toronto? Not really. No, not the way this year's gone. So they're going to have enough room for Eichel. He plays tomorrow on Wednesday, right? So what's interesting about this whole story is that it continues. You've got Leonard, upper body injury. He's out. They've called up Logan Thompson, goalie of the future. They've got him signed for another few years. But I think the Leonard situation might be worse than what they're letting on. I don't think they're telling us the whole story. So this thing with Leonard's been going on for a while where he's expected to be the starter and then, Brossoit's in net. But Brossoit's not a guy that you're going to want as your playoff starter going into the playoffs. So, Daily Faceoff is reporting that Marc-Andre Fleury has, at least there's interest on the Vegas side in bringing Fleury back. Now, of course, I got two Marc-Andre Fleury jerseys for $40 each from the NHL shop because they were just selling them out and he got traded. And now there's the possibility Vegas could take him back. Fleury's playing very well right now. And I've seen people say, well, though that bridge has been burned and he wouldn't want to go back after the way he was treated on his way out. But in Chicago, he's not going to make the playoffs. This is the last year of his contract. He can go to Vegas and have a chance to play in the playoffs, and Vegas has a very good team. Now, to get Fleury in there, that's another $7 million. So, do you get Chicago to retain some of the salary from that contract you signed so you get him back? And or send a player, say, I don't know, Dodonov, somebody then back. And I'm just saying that as an example, just the kind of money you'd need to move out. It could get really dicey at that point. But with Leonard on the shelf, that means that money's freed up. And I would not be surprised to see Marc-Andre Fleury necessarily come back if the team and the player can make that work. And Leonard end up on LTIR as well. It would not entirely surprise me. I would expect the internet to kind of melt down if that does take place. But again, if they're in a situation where Leonard is not able to play, they've got to find somebody, And again, I like Brossoit as a backup. He's had a very good year in Vegas. But if you're going to go into the playoffs and hope to have a shot at a cup, I think Fleury gives you a better chance at that than does Laurent Brossoit. So as much Vegas news as there's been over the last little while, and there could be a lot more. And it's almost as if they've said, well, if people were mad at Tampa, we can make that a lot worse. People will forget all about Tampa pretty quick, which they won't. However, the Kucherov situation last year in Tampa seemed to have people forgetting about the Patrick Kane situation in Chicago back in 2015. And again, it's not anything that's untoward. It's just, is it a loophole? Yes. Is it one that people want to see closed? I don't think the league does. I don't think the league sees any reason to close that loophole. There are certainly fans, and I think there's media as well that would support changing that loophole. All right, that being said, Vegas news aside, let's talk about other news, including Ymir Jágr turning 50, and he's still playing hockey. Absolutely remarkable that he's still playing hockey at age 50. I am a big fan of Jágr at this point in time. For being willing to strap on a pair of skates and go out there and still go out and play the game that he loves. So happy birthday to Ymir Jágr, 50 years of age. And as long as he's still playing, that means that I am younger than somebody who's still playing professional hockey. it's probably not going to be the case much longer. But hey, I'm still younger. All right. Boston News, Bergeron's expected to practice tomorrow, so he could return on Thursday. He will not play tonight, but he could return on Thursday. Head injuries are, again, it's really hard to get a feel for when somebody's necessarily going to be ready to come back to play because, again, physically, it's not, they're able to skate, they're able to lift weights, but when it's the head, right? So hopefully he's able to come back for Thursday and the Bruins get a little bit healthier. Interesting to look at what's going on with Edmonton, right? So they fired Dave Tippett. Last night they get their first shutout of the season, and their defense looks better. They really didn't give San Jose anything in the final two periods, much less the last 15 minutes of the first period either. So that defensive improvement without Tippett is something we've seen with other teams as well. And it's odd because Tippett is when he was a player, he was one of the better defensive forwards in the game. You would think that Dave Tippett behind the bench would mean your team might have some issues with scoring, but the defense is on point. And again, we're seeing that with Edmonton, things are, and again, it's early. You will get that bounce with the coach. We'll see if it stays that way. But like in Vancouver, under Bruce Boudreau, things have been much, much better defensively. So we will see whether or not that remains the case with Edmonton. If their defense and goaltending are improved under a new coach, they will be a playoff team. I'd be honestly stunned if they didn't make it into the playoffs with better defense and better goaltending. And again, how much the goaltending has looked bad because of maybe some poor defense in front of them, that's what we'll find out over the next few weeks as well. And that will influence what Ken Holland does at the deadline. One thing with the trade of Tyler Toffoli yesterday and the high price that was paid by Calgary to pick up Toffoli, JT Miller should ideally bring back a larger package of assets. Honestly, I think if you can get more than what Toffoli got for the Montreal Canadiens, I don't see how Vancouver doesn't pull the trigger. I love JT Miller. I think he's been great in Vancouver for the last couple of years especially. He's been a lot of fun to watch. He wears his heart on his sleeve. You know exactly how he's feeling in any given game. And might be one of the players who throws more F-bombs than almost anybody else on the ice. You can tell when he's out there. But according to Rutherford, president of the team, they're not in any rush to make a deal. And it might come back to what Brad Treliving said yesterday. One of the reasons he made the Toffoli deal is because right now it's like you're driving down the highway and everything's, easy and shifting lanes, is whatever else, right? But that at the trade deadline, it's like you've got five lanes of traffic trying to merge into one. And everybody's, over top of each other. And so it's easier to make deals now. So I think Vancouver, who would be likely sellers at the deadline, maybe it is best for them to wait and have teams, jumping over each other trying to pick up JT Miller. The one rumor that does seem to make a lot of sense would be Miller ending up back with the New York Rangers. He would provide them with an immediate boost to their scoring depth, and he knows the team. I think that would probably work, and the Rangers are now in a position where they've got a lot of good young players. They're in the playoffs. They can afford to trade a first-round pick. They can afford to trade a prospect. And so it's one that I've seen the most trade proposals with, and fans doing their fantasy trades. Usually it's Miller going to the Rangers. There are other teams that are going to be in on him as well if the Canucks do decide to move him. But I think you also want to be careful because you want to make sure you're sending the right message to the rest of the players that are in Vancouver that they're not starting a rebuild when they haven't finished the last one. So we'll see how they handle it and what kind of a package they get back if they do decide to trade Miller. But to me, I think his value right now is just too high for them not to make that move. You can get first-round draft pick and a really good prospect, and it'd be nice to see that with Vancouver. There are some good young pieces in Vancouver. It'd be nice to add to that core. So last night, Mitch Marner reaches 400 points. He was the third fastest Toronto Maple Leaf to do so as a Toronto Maple Leaf. So Daryl Sittler. Yeah, Daryl Sutter, no. Daryl Sittler, yes. And never made that mistake before. So Daryl Sittler and Austin Matthews are the two fastest. He is the second in his draft class to reach 400 points. Connor McDavid was first. He's pretty good. It only took him 392 games. And he also now has 4 power play goals. So we went like 100 games between power play goals. But he's doing pretty well, and he is scoring goals like it's easy all of a sudden. So this is the thing. Marner, red hot right now. I've said before, I think Marner is a huge part of that Toronto Maple Leafs team, arguably their MVP at times. And I've loved the player from his first game in the NHL. I think he's fantastic. I know he goes through droughts. I know it gets frustrating. Odds are it gets frustrating for him as well. But when he's on top of his game and he's playing really well, it is something to watch. So, yeah, kudos to Marner for reaching that 400-point mark. He's currently sitting at 401 in 392 games. Olympics, last night, Canada beat the other Canadians from the Chinese team. This is not anything new. I've seen comments about this. Host nations bringing in players and making them citizens so that they can use them at the Olympics. It's not really anything new. So what China's doing by having players that are, American born or Canadian born and putting them on the Chinese team, it's not really anything brand new. They're eliminated now. So the quarterfinals will be USA versus Slovakia. Should be a very good matchup. The Russian Olympic Committee or the Russian whatever. The Russians, right, versus Denmark. It's not fooling anybody. The Russians versus Denmark. So Denmark makes it into the quarterfinals, which is a huge win for them. Finland versus Switzerland. I think that one should be pretty interesting. And then Sweden versus Canada, and what should be the best game of the quarterfinals. Honestly, I'm giving the edge to Sweden in that one. I think I like the Swedes in that one a little bit more than the Canadians, but we shall see. It's going to be an interesting game between them and see who ends up winning the gold. So of the 8 teams, 3 of them are going to end up being medalists. The teams on the left side here, USA, Russia, Finland, Sweden, are probably the most likely. Although Canada, right here, Canada usually, once you get to the medal round, pretty darn solid in the Olympics. But we'll see. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.